Hey, I'm here today to tell you the origin of the Bliss technique. It's a good story. It always warms my heart to tell it. So just bliss up and love up and be with me, and I'll share with you the most interesting tale of how I was given this technique. I can say I was given the technique by my Father in heaven, and I don't necessarily mean God, I mean my father, who passed on, okay? And I think he was in heaven when he gave it to me. So it all started when my dad had lung cancer and brain cancer and was dying. And I wanted to help him to have a good death. So I was reading the Tibetan Book of the Dead so that I could coach him in having a very beautiful transition. And the Book of the Dead teaches that to help someone make a very good and holy exit, you might say, you want them to go out the crown chakra, and we'll call that the high bounce. You go straight to heaven if you go out the crown chakra. If you go out some sideways ear chakra or something, you may not go as high. You might end up in what's called the bardo. And I don't want to get into the whole Book of the Dead. It's a fascinating read. It's useful. But the Bliss technique is a very, very powerful way to help someone make a good transition. And I was reading and studying so that I could help my father. And I had always been into metaphysics and spirituality, and, just that was the right thing to do. And then he got brain cancer. The lung cancer expanded to the brain, and it was definitely his end time. And they flew me out. He wanted to see me really bad, and I could tell he was getting ready to go. And he wanted to see me because I was always his weird son who did all this crazy metaphysical stuff. And I guess he just wanted to check in with me. I don't know. It was really kind of sweet. So we're in the hospital, and he's in the fetal position, and, just looks kind of like a baby bird, no hair and just all scrunched up, couldn't hardly move. And, it's kind of hard to talk to him. And I'm starting the conversation, and we're warming up to each other. There's a lot of love flowing. We had fairly decent amount of issues like fathers and sons do, and that was all forgiven, and there was a lot of love flowing. And I was telling him, to now that you're here in the hospital and you've got time to think, try to imagine this white light in the top of your head. Because we weren't saying death, it wasn't quite appropriate to say now that you're dying, he just wasn't in that conversation, right? So I'm just kind of hinting around like, hey, you're in the hospital here, maybe when you meditate, you kind of see if you can see a white light in the top of your head. And we're kind of getting high together because there's so much love flowing. And then the conversation got very interesting. He said, I'm interested in all this funny stuff you learned about spirituality, blah, 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 but I sure wish you'd never left the church, because I was raised Catholic. And he said, I sure wish you hadn't given up on Jesus. And I said, hey, I never gave up on Jesus. Me and Jesus are good friends. I love Jesus, And I got this impulse to say a story to him. It just kind of came in. I said, hey, but you guys kind of missed the point. You were saying that he died for my sins, but I seem to recall in the Bible story, he was crucified, but then he got up, he rose up from the dead, and he forgave everybody. He said, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. And I'm having this conversation with him, and I'm seeing lights out of the sides of my eyes, and I'm thinking it's the angels coming to take him away. I'm just feeling this twinkling in the air and seeing the light and stuff. And he's hearing me, for the first time. He's really getting it that, you got a point there, And then he starts to smile a little bit, and he gets kind of this happy look on his face. And I could tell he's relating to Jesus because he loved Jesus very much, He's relating to the story about Jesus. And then he looks up and he says, I think I'll beat this thing, And now it's like my turn to kind of laugh like, hey, Dad, this is not a cold, okay? He says, I think I'll beat this thing. And he literally shakes it off, like, right in front of me. Like, he has a spontaneous remission right in front of my eyes, okay, from a person who can't move, completely curled up and ready to go. You'd swear it was his last hour on the planet. And he just shakes it off and sits up and calls the nurse because he wants to go home. And I'm in shock. I got nothing in my history to prepare me for that, right? And the thing that's really funny, my mother comes in the room and she gives me this funny look like, now what have you done? Like the time she caught us smoking a joint together, it's like, now what have you done? And he's like sitting up. He's like, I want to go home. And they unplug him from all the stuff and he just goes home, and he's just fine. He's just threw it off. You've heard of spontaneous remissions. Well, I was at one. And I'll tell you, you don't ever recover from seeing that. You got to know that there's a lot we can do with our minds and our faith and our beliefs. And of course, Jesus probably helped, or the angels, I don't know. But anyway, he went home and he just was fine, wasn't in pain, just went home and finished his life out, probably another 8 months, just chilling out. He was an old man. He was 83, older. Just hanging out at his house in Florida by the beach, and then one day, sitting out in the sun, he left the planet. He just poof. And I'm guessing he just blissed out, blissed up. And I think he was practicing that meditation of seeing the white light in the top of the head. Because a very peculiar thing happened. On my way to the funeral, I'm in the plane, and all of a sudden, it's like this bolt of white light comes in the top of my head, and I'm cracking up. I'm laughing my ass off. I'm just so happy and high, and it's like he's up there, and he's going, yo, dude, I got the high bounce. It worked. Yay, yippee. And I was like, nothing could have prepared me for that. I was ecstatic. I was totally ecstatic, and I was lit up, and I couldn't stop laughing. I'm at the funeral, and I have to just keep leaving the room and going and laying out in the grass, laughing my ass off and chuckling and rolling around because I was so high. It's just like he poked a hole in the top of my crown chakra and just started pumping this light in. He's like, wow, who can I reach? Here I am in heaven. Oh, there's my son. He's got a hole in his head. I'll just blast him with the light because everybody else is grieving. People should be more cheerful at funerals, and maybe that way the departed one can make you happy and high and shine their light into your head. But anyway, he blasted me with it. I had a marvelous time, and it stayed with me. And then, ever since then, I was able to just do that technique that I teach, tongue up, smile up, love up, and just be really, really connected to God and light and love and divinity, whatever you want to call it that's up there, that which is up there. Whatever is up there, Wyatt. And I had the technique, ever since that time, and I kept it to myself. I mean, I would use it from time to time, and I've got a lot of miracle stories that I'll share with you about things that happened while using the technique, but it was only recently that I was given the message, so to speak, to teach this to everybody, because it just works. But that's where I got it from my Father on the other side, from my Father in heaven. And the Bliss technique not only makes you incredibly vital and young and alive, but it also helps you return to that beautiful place from whence we came. So it definitely works to help people make their transition, teach them the Bliss technique, and teach them to love up and return to the heart of God if they're religious, or return to their source if they're, New Age, whatever language they use. But that's the way to go to have a wonderful release from your earthly service, or to return home. And that's where the Bliss technique came from. So I'm really looking forward to helping people make their transition with this technique, as well as making people healthy and happy and whole. And that's the story of where the Bliss technique came from. Thank you. Love up.